Welcome to another episode of Monster Monday from the Ready to Die channel. This series explores the design of a creature I have built for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. The stat block for this creature can be found over on the Monster Monday blog, as well as the Twitter and Discord, all of which are linked below. Had a nice visit with a friend, went to the local Ren Fair, handed out candy for Halloween, and now I'm back with another creature from Monster Hunter. It's a big one this week, folks, featuring the outer dragon, Namielle. Otherwise known as the Abyssal Dragon, Namielle's design borrows heavily from sea creatures, such as squids, jellyfish, and even electric eels. While primarily associated with the water element, the latter design aspect also grants it access to the electric element, which it uses in concert with its water to a devastating degree. I usually build outer dragons at level 18 creatures, but discussing it with the folks on the Monster Monday Discord, they felt that it was a bit weaker than normal, which led to me designing it as a level 17 creature this time around. I wanted to stick with dragon as its primary trait, and for the lore write-up I even delved into a bit on what I think outer dragons can be in a setting such as Pathfinder. While encountered on the land in Monster Hunter, its name and other features suggest that the Namielle is at least partially aquatic, so I also included the amphibious trait. This watery wyvern is another gargantuan monstrosity that is equipped with an extreme strength and a high constitution, able to survive the ocean's depths and made all the stronger for it. It uses only a moderate dexterity, as even its graceful moves aren't enough to convince me that it should be higher. As an elder dragon, a band of more primitive creatures, the Namielle only has a low wisdom, and an even lower intelligence and charisma, though I did want to reference the cleverness of the Namielle in combining its water and electricity to terrifying effect. Therefore, it uses the intelligence that a beast would have instead of a mere animal. It doesn't do a lot to make use of its acrobatics or athletics, but I included a high intimidation to reference the opening scene of the Namielle, where it seems to intentionally block out the sun to frighten its prey. This creature seems to be more of a hunter than an ambush predator, leading to a higher perception, and even if it wasn't a dragon, it needs dark vision to see in the depths from which it derives. The Namielle is equipped with a high armor class, as that's largely where I tend to err, unless I have a specific reason to make it higher or lower. Its hit points are also high, which is partially to account for its substantial weakness to fire, which is its greatest weakness in its home game. I assume that this is because the heat from flames dry out the Namielle, crippling it, but I couldn't find anything that really went into the why behind this. Its high fortitude save is based on its higher constitution, and its moderate reflex also matches the moderate dexterity it uses. A low will save gives it a weak point for the players to take advantage of outside of its weakness to fire. Namielle are surprisingly graceful flyers, leading to a high but not massive fly speed, and then a slightly lower swim speed, as all encounters with it are upon terra firma, leaving its swimming capability unknown. Operating somewhat off of the general design of dragons within Pathfinder 2e, the Namielle strikes use a high attack bonus, and naturally both have considerable reach given its size. Its wings deal moderate damage, and have the agile trait to account for their paired nature. On the other hand, its jaws deal high damage and have the deadly trait, since Namielle weapons have at least some measure of affinity, the crit chance in Monster Hunter. There's quite a few tools in the Namielle's kit, and I included quite a bit of interactivity in its design, but we'll start with something simple. Obviously, as a dragon, it has the typical Draconic Frenzy, using its jaws and wings. I considered including Draconic Momentum, but it had plenty of options in its kit. It kinda felt unnecessary, that it has tons of things it can do. It doesn't need to be worried about recharging its breath weapon every round. A sort of central ability of its kit is Puddle. This simply named ability ended up having a bit more to it than I initially planned. This is based on the pools and streams of water that the Namielle leaves around the battlefield during its fight. This gives the Namielle something it can do with a third action, and while I understand if it isn't something every GM wants to deal with, I like these sorts of abilities that set up the battlefield. One of the main features of these puddles, aside from slowing down combat by providing difficult terrain for the Namielle to defend itself with, is that it can release electric bursts from its wings to vaporize them in a burst of steam. The damage dealt by an evaporating puddle is slightly more than unlimited use damage at a high DC, whereas its steam effect is based on things such as obscuring mist. Before we get into the ways that the Namielle can trigger its puddles and this steam, I want to discuss Undertow. The Namielle will sometimes unleash powerful currents and eddies that throw hunters off balance, which I wanted to represent through this ability. This ability takes quite a bit of positioning and might not work against enemies who are aware of it, but with its range, safety, and multiple attack penalty compression, I felt like it should at least be a 3-action ability. Continuing on, the Namielle can unleash hydraulic beams of water, which is represented through its Torrent Blast. This deals slightly below limited use damage at a high DC, and also creates a puddle under the first creature hit. This helps the Namielle spread puddles around while also getting in some decent damage in an area, but is otherwise a basic breath weapon sort of ability. In Monster Hunter, the Namielle has two different supercharged states. One where it is dripping with water, and another where it crackles with electricity. Both are represented by Gather Power. This gives another third action that could be used in place of puddles if you don't want to deal with that. Its defensive hydrated state causes it to gain resistance to physical damage, but also increases its weakness to fire. Whereas its charged state is more offensive in nature, adding electricity to its strikes and probably being the easiest way for it to evaporate its puddles. Being in a charged state unlocks some of Namielle's electric attacks, including Flowing Flight. This is fairly simple, just being a flyby attack based on the Namielle floating gracefully over a target that it then batters with its wings, looking briefly like a jellyfish as they close on the victim. As many of you know at this point, I love including unique reactions for monsters, and this gave me an opportunity to do two of them, one for each of its states. When charged, it can release a defensive jolt when struck to deal unlimited use area damage on a high DC reflex save. Again, keeping with the more offensive and damage-based design of the charged state. Meanwhile, when hydrated, the Namielle can use Slip and Slide to keep out of range of an enemy, forcing them to spend more actions to chase it while also leaving behind a puddle to further help it set up. Set up for what, you may ask? Well, aside from controlling the battlefield with difficult terrain and undertow, there is one final ability for the Namielle that interacts with its puddles. Flash Flood. This is the Namielle's big ability, and the one that probably pays the most to spread puddles beforehand. It already covers a sizable area as a 30-foot emanation, but then also spreads to any puddles that may overlap with it, to create a greater swath in which it deals damage. This damage is a bit over unlimited use area damage with a high DC. This might seem a bit weird, as it is an ability with a cooldown, one that forces the Namielle to seek out bodies of water to recharge, possibly having a longer cooldown than most actions would. It also loses access to its water abilities during this time. But the thing to keep in mind is that the area and puddles also evaporate, as described in the puddle ability, meaning on top of that 12d6 electricity damage, there's another 10d6 fire damage for creatures caught in the area. 22d6 puts it at a handful of dice above limited use area damage, which fits for such a substantial ability like this. Last time I did a Monster Hunter build, I kinda forgot to include an item for it. This time around though, I remembered to put something together. The Abyss skin is named for the Namielle's epithet, while also being a light armor that resists electricity and grants a bonus to swim checks. Its activated effect is based on the Namielle Divinity's skill, granted by wearing multiple pieces of its armor, and is admittedly kinda basic. There's a part of me that wants to do more with it. There's a substantial part of me that wants to do more with it, but it is very true to the effects in game, and a decent effect if you don't have anything else to do with your third action. I also specifically wanted to keep this as light armor, so that kineticists and casters with minor investment could make use of it, since it is kinda mostly designed for them. There's quite a bit to the Namielle, but that pretty much covers it. This sinister suspect spreads stunning shocks through slippery streams, subjugating survivors and sending them into shuddering shambles. The Namielle is another big creature, probably best suited as some sort of boss monster. Given how Flash Flood functions, it likely either needs to be spreading its puddles, or its encounter needs to occur near a water source, so that it can rehydrate itself, and keep the fight going. Let me know what you think of the Namielle, and what other monsters you might like to see in a comment below. You can check out the Monster Monday blog and Twitter for the stat blocks, or hop on the Discord to join the monster making and general tabletop discussions. These posts also include a Pathfinder 1st Edition version of the monster, along with a D&D 5e conversion. Thanks for watching, and have a monstrous Monday.